Satisfactory is a first-person open-world factory-building game with a dash of exploration and combat. Play alone or with friends, explore an alien planet, create multi-story factories, and enter conveyor belt heaven. So, this is Satisfactory, a game that has been in development longer than Brexit. Originally available on the Epic Store in early access, the game has since had 3 major updates and will be released on Steam within the next few weeks. As the update brings lots of new things to the game, it seems like a good time to review the game as it is so far. Of course, being early access, it's still unfinished with many rough spots that need some work. There is enough here, however, to be able to review it fairly, so let's get started. The game revolves around you, resources and conveyor belts. Lots of conveyor belts. Imagine a beautiful landscape, a quiet river surrounded by trees, a waterfall cascading into a delicate mist of spray, the odd wild herbivore lumbering around the lands, and crisscrossed with mile after mile of conveyor belt, carrying resources from one place to another. That's exactly what you'll be seeing in Satisfactory, and it is oddly satisfying. Actually, with Update 3, you'll also get the pleasure of fluid dynamics. Yes, pipes are now in the game, bringing their own flavour of fun and frustration. Pipes are used primarily for cooling power plants and transporting various flammable liquids around the game world. This changes things dramatically from before. Coal power stations, for example, never needed any cooling, just a steady supply of ancient, hardened, dead plants. But now you require water to be pumped in from a deep lake to keep things from overheating. Now this is done by using a water extractor, which sucks up the wet stuff, ready to be moved by pipe to your hot, thirsty power generators. As with all things hydraulic, flow is determined by that necessary but rather irritating force of gravity. Liquid doesn't tend to flow up so well, so unless you find a high source of your chosen fluid, you're going to need to use pumps. Now, these pumps attach to the pipe, moving the liquid on and upwards, and is essential for when you have split your pipes into multiple outlets, as the fluid pressure will drop, hence the need for the pumps. However, one must be careful with this pressure thing. Too much can cause your pumps to shut down, for your safety of course. Thus you need to check the levels of the pumps and reach an equilibrium of pressure. Not too much, but not too little. The addition of pipes and fluids greatly increases the logistical complexities, but it is a very welcome addition to the game. Anyway, for those who've never played it before, here we go. Look, you are an employee of FICSYT, which I presume stands for Fix-It, a company specialising in the research, development and application of new technology and science. As part of the Save the Day programme, you've been sent to an alien planet in an effort to contribute to the mysterious Project Assembly. I have no idea what that is yet. I haven't looked into it too much because obviously I don't want to spoil the surprise, so that could be interesting, but yeah, I don't know what it is right now. So you do this by harvesting resources, building machinery and tools, and ultimately creating specific parts and sending vast quantities of these to your employers via the space elevator. You build the space elevator maybe a few tiers into the game. It does take a lot of resources, and then at that point onwards, that's your primary goal. Now, every time you send the required number of parts, you open a new tier of equipment and blueprints for even more advanced technology, allowing you to create ever more complex machinery and yet more advanced parts for the project. Currently, there are 8 tiers to unlock. Getting to the last tier will take a long time. Of course, this entirely depends on your play style. You could play rushed and ragged, or neat and tidy and measured. Spend enough time on the many buildings, tools and materials, and you can create a thing of mechanised beauty, sprawling levels of aesthetically pleasing automation, stacked as many stories high as you wish. Or you can just plop stuff anywhere and immerse yourself in glorious constructed chaos. The choice is absolutely up to you. In fact, the best thing about this game is the sheer freedom you have to do whatever you want. You're not forced into using prefabs or specific layouts for conveyors and pipes. You can shove them almost anywhere you wish, provided they don't encroach on other equipment space. Encroach, oh, you will hate to dislike that word. The only irritating thing about the game in that respect is that while you can place parts almost anywhere on the map, there does seem to be a problem with pushing like foundations or other equipment next to an existing piece. Now, sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't. It's not always obvious why you can't do it. I assume there's a hitbox problem, and when you try to put a foundation on top of a piece of machinery, for example, sometimes you're allowed to do it. Otherwise it'll just say encroachment. Yeah, it can be a little bit frustrating, but it's not that bad. It's easily worked around. There is much more to be done in the game. Exploration is a key element, seeking out new resource locations and finding hidden locations with unusual items. Now, a lot of these are marked as work in progress at the moment. They don't actually do anything in the game, and when you do find them, it does tell you that as well. So I assume that these are going to be added at a later date. Some of these items look very interesting. Not entirely sure what they do yet, but yeah, that could be quite cool, I think. Now, you also find wibbly power slugs, which are dotted around the game world, and these can be used to overclock your various machines to work faster, or you can enhance your scanner, which you use to locate resources such as iron or copper. There's also mushrooms that taste like bacon, nuts and fruits which are harvested to restore your health, and various nasty alien creatures that live near most of these things that take it away again. Combat in the game is fairly simple. You start with a cattle prod type device which kills most nasties in about 4 or 5 jabs. Eventually you can upgrade this to a Xeno Basher, which is basically a kind of an energy sword, which is a lot more effective. You can create a rebar gun which fires nails from a distance, and then eventually you can upgrade this to be a rifle for far faster takedowns. The alien life is not particularly diverse though. You have an armoured 4-legged dog thing that dashes around you and then charges at you. A strange creature with a boomerang shaped head which spits all different types of goo at you, acidic, fiery, you get the idea. These usually hunt in packs and can be fairly troublesome. And then there are spider type things that usually hunt in groups and are nasty little things. They skitter around on spindly legs and can hide in bushes and long grass to surprise you. You also find that all of these creatures have a kind of maybe a boss creature, like an alpha. They're a lot bigger than the others, take a few more hits to knock down and definitely hit harder. These are not to be trifled with at the beginning of the game because you won't last 5 seconds. Eventually you can upgrade your equipment, armour, etc., and then it will help you defeat these nasty things. One thing to note is that the developer has kindly added an arachnophobia mode, which changes these little spider things to something far less phobia-inducing if you don't like them. A nice touch, I think. Now, death. Death causes you to drop all your currently held belongings into a nice little chest, and it will allow you to reclaim everything by visiting your place of exploration. This can be very troublesome if you died while exploring, and most of the time you'll want to go and get your stuff because when you do tend to carry a lot of resources with you. Irritating, but a good incentive to avoid death whenever possible. So, how does a game work then? What do you do? Well, the idea of the game is pretty much this. If you watch the gameplay while I'm doing this review, you'll have a good idea of how it all works, but it goes something along these lines. After completing the basic tutorial, which shows the basics of resource gathering, machine creation, that sort of thing, you then pick one of the subsections for the tier that you're currently working on to work towards unlocking that tree of tech. Faster conveyor belts or a new power source and the machines to use it. And this is done in the form of targets. So you make X amount of one thing, Y amount of another, and then you send it off to your employer by way of an automated shuttle. Big red button, you push that and it sends it off in a big rocket. Now, in order to make something, you need the necessary components. So, for example, you may need to make 100 iron pipes. Now, to get iron, you need to mine it from a specific resource node, either by digging it by hand, using a small automated miner, or by building a large industrial excavator on top of the node itself. Once you have the raw ore, you need to process it into iron ingots. Again, you could do this by hand, which does take a long time, or you build a smelter which does this for you. Then you need to turn these ingots into pipes, which is done by a constructor, a machine that changes ingots into anything useful. Now, some of the items require 2 resources to make one item. For example, if you want to make steel, you would need some coal and you would need some iron ore. Now you do this by use of an assembler. So you combine pipes with screws, for example, you get a rotor, which is part of a motor, and then you would eventually combine this with something else to make something else and make it even something more complex, which will eventually be used by another item, and so on and so forth. This is how you get to the top end items in the game. You have to build lots and lots of sub items and eventually get to the one you want. Now, all machines are linked together with conveyor belts. These are as long or as short as you want, sometimes spanning half the game world to bring out of the way resources to your main complex. Of course, creating conveyor belts cost resources themselves, so you need to be sure you have plenty with you as you go. Now, another tier adds various vehicles to the game. Tractors, for example, are slow but able to carry a lot of stuff, and these are essential as you start to expand away from your initial hub. The game world is quite vast, and walking to and from one section of the map to the other, that could be a little bit tiresome if you didn't have wheels to go with it. Now, you can drive these tractors directly, or you can set up an autonomous route, carrying resources from one tractor stop to another, which you build. The stops loading and unloading cargo to be used elsewhere in your factory. Unfortunately, this is one of the weaker aspects of the game. See, when the pathing works, it is very satisfying to watch your tractors scurry around doing all the legwork for you. When it doesn't, it's a frustrating task to locate the confused tractor and point it back in the right direction. Now, the issue is the pathing system. See, to create a path, you get on the vehicle, you hit the record button, and you drive the entire loop in real time. I mean, you can edit the time to stop at each pause location in order to give your tractors time to load and unload the cargo, and you can delete nodes if you make a wrong turn. However, you cannot pause recording, and then you can't resume it or append or even edit existing pathways. The only thing you can do is to delete an existing node of a pathway, which is only placed down in the game world once every, say, 3 or 4 seconds. So there's no fine tuning of paths in case you hit a wall, for example, and you want to double back and delete that node and then carry on as if you never hit that wall. You just simply can't do this at all, and you have to redo the entire path from scratch, which is more than just a bit irritating. Now, worse than this is that you can't even share the pathing with other tractors. So let's say you have 3 tractors and a ring of 5 stops, some to load coal from mining pits and others to unload for power stations or steel foundries. You have to drive each tractor around the route individually. You cannot do one and then just use that route to set for the other tractors, which is bizarre. Very disappointing, and I hope this and the whole pathing system is overhauled in the future update. I mean, even the nodes for each vehicle are the same colour, which is blue. It would be a bit easier to assign different colours for each vehicle, so at least you knew where each vehicle was going. But no, they're all the same colour. So yeah, I do hope this is fixed in a future update, because the idea of pathing is definitely a good idea, but it does need some work. Later, you get a train system, like a monorail system, which is much easier to work with. It's the same pathing system, but, well, given the nature of trains, it's a lot less hassle to set up routes. You can also, in the new update, create hyperloops for very fast personal transport, and it's absolutely superb. If anyone's familiar with Elon Musk and his wonderful idea of sending people through tubes, this is basically the same idea, except that this is more like the Futurama version, where you just get into a tube and it sucks you off and off you go, pardon the expression. You can set these hyperloops anywhere you want with branching routes and the ability to double back. If you miss a stop, you can just push backwards and just turn around and go back the other way. the idea of these hyperloops is fantastic. They're quite expensive. They take the steel pipes, which takes a lot longer to build in the game. So you're not going to be using these hyperloops immediately, but once you do get a big enough factory, then you'll already be building these pipes. So it does make sense. Now there's even these bouncy pads that fling you all over the place. You would use these if you wanted to like go from one place to another really quickly. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that you have a bouncy pad on the other end, and that you actually put it in the right path of the trajectory that you will be flung in. If you miss, you kind of die. You can actually get this little tractor. It's like a pod, if you like. Just call it a pod. You get it from the rewards things I'll mention in a minute, and you can use this to trundle around the complex. It's not as big as a tractor, it's quite a small little thing, but you can use that to bounce around as well, and that's just absolutely mad. Fun's like playing pinball, but yeah, quite good fun. Graphically, the game is more than adequate. The great use of colour for the various biomes looks superb, and the varied landscaping is clearly designed by hand. You're not going to find any procedurally generated stuff here. Textures are a little bit hit and miss. Some look absolutely fine, where others, especially on rocks and other large objects, can be very blurry and close up. I suspect these are placeholders because the other graphics in the game look fantastic, so I expect these to be cleared up in the later update. The various machinery all looks great with lots of individual moving parts, and when you have a group of them all working together, it does look superb. There's even got day-night cycles which work, and the shadows, which are a little bit juddery, are soft and they do look very nice. Now, probably a technical choice, but slightly off-putting, is the distant LOD animations. This is a very low frame rate. I mean, conveyor belts move things at 3 frames a second at distance. We are talking very, very far. It's not like it's close up. I mean, these are way off in the distance. Tractors move at the same speed, and while clearly done to ensure everything runs smoothly, it is very noticeable. Perhaps a setting for higher powered PCs that can handle such distances would not be a bad future addition. I don't know how much of a difference that would make to like the overall graphics. It might slow it down so it is too difficult to even with the most powerful PCs to draw, but yeah, I think it would be worth looking at. The developer has mentioned on the roadmap that he's got on the website, I say he, I should say they, that they are optimising the graphics at a later date as well, so presumably this will all be improved in future releases. The hyperloop glass tubes have a great transparency effect which makes them look very good. Coal power stations belch out smoke, dust blows on the plains of deserts. The environment just looks fantastic. Wind passes through the foliage, it all moves around. I mean, yeah, the graphics in general are fairly basic overall. I mean, you're not going to find photorealism here, but I do like the overall design of the game. It does what it needs to do. It's clean, it's simple, it's effective. The graphic options are adequate. So usual levels of anti-aliasing, textures, view distance is all there. There is an FOV slider which is excellent, although in 2020 this should be an expected option rather than something to be happy about, but I'm glad it's there. The game itself runs absolutely fine on my system, which you'll find my specs below, with only the occasional hitch which I would put down to the asset loading. It is rare. It didn't happen enough to annoy me. I would again expect this to probably improve in the future. At full details, no motion blur, I was getting between 100 and 130 FPS, which is absolutely fine for a game with so many items on the screen. I suspect, as I mentioned before, if we increase the number of frames for LOD items, I would imagine that frame rate would drop quite considerably. As it is though, for people on a standard 60 FPS, 60 Hz monitor, you're going to have no bother whatsoever running this. I don't know exactly how well it scales on lower machines, but the levels of detail you can turn down, I would expect that would make a difference, and it should be playable on probably most machines at this day and age. The sound on the game is fine, albeit a little basic. The background music is good, a chilled mix of laid-back tracks with no sense of stress or tension. The little sound stings when you complete a milestone or achieve something of note is nice, and Ada's voice sounds a bit like one of GLaDOS's distant cousins. Speaking of Ada, which is the voice of the computer companion, I kind of feel the developers have missed a trick here. Ada sounds a bit more like Alexa than any form of advanced AI, and I think updating Ada to be a little bit more chatty and helpful would be a great asset to the game. Now, given there there appears to be a story behind the game, this might come later. I do hope it does, because I think it'd be quite good to have your AI companion pointing things out to you, giving you little clues, chatting away to you, bringing bits of the story in with it. I think that sort of thing would be really good, because the game world is pretty much you and the sound of machinery, and I think a bit of extra companionship in the form of your computer would probably help. Sound effects are typical for this sort of game, although the whir of machinery always in the background is very well done, and when you move away from your complex to the more quieter areas, you can tell the difference. To be honest though, there's not a massive amount to say about the sound. It's functional, it does what it does, and that's pretty much about it. What it does do is very good. Yes. Well, at least if you like this kind of factory construction game. While occasionally frustrating you with game mechanics that could possibly use a little bit of finesse, like the autopiloting pathing, or not being able to build more than one foundation tile at a time, and similar little niggles, and wondering why your power network has failed yet again due to a pipe pressure being just a bit too low, you'll find yourself spending hours building, refining, rebuilding. God, there is so much to do in this game, and it's all really easy to pick up. There's nothing complicated here, but I wouldn't suggest it's too simplistic either. It's the right balance of not quite knowing what to do to begin with, following the simple instructions, using some common sense, and just following the way the game's designed. You can see what they want you to do. It's not difficult to pick up. There is a certain amount of maintenance, let's call it, making sure everything is running smoothly, but it's more fun than irritating. You can shovel spare resources into what's called the Awesome Shop, which is a new addition on update 3. This slightly irked me, but not much after I realised what the developers were trying to do. In earlier versions of the game, most of the items that you can buy from the shop were just as part of the updates anyway. We're talking things like stairs and railings and other wall types with conveyor belt holes and windows. Now you have to get these from this shop instead. Now, the shop lets you exchange an obscene amount of resources for a single ticket. The number of tickets that you can buy decreases with the number of tickets you've already had. So, for example, if one ticket takes 1,000 resources, the next ticket is going to take 2,000 and 4,000, and it goes up and up and up. So, again, I absolutely understand the reason behind doing this. The shop, you can exchange these tickets for things like prettier walls, like I said, the stairs, railings, windows, or a cute little pod that I mentioned earlier that you can drive around in. Or you can even purchase resources in case you find yourself in immediate need of some. They are far too expensive to use regularly, and they can be very handy if you need to complete a milestone and you're having problems making a resource quickly enough. When you buy one resource of type, say for example you want some copper pipes or iron pipes or steel pipes or concrete bars or whatever, you get about 100 of these for usually 1 or 2 tickets. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you check the amount of resources that you need per ticket after buying each item, it becomes impossibly huge. You're never going to do that just to cheat. It's not going to happen. Now, there's also an optional research tree using the Molecular Analysis Machine, or MAM device. You can build this early on and use it to unlock various tools and extra inventory space by analysing the various items and resources that you find as you explore. unlocking things like parachutes, health inhalers, tools to enhance your scanning range, and there's loads more. You can even unlock dyes which allow you to colour your machines and vehicles to whatever you want, so there's a lot of customization in the game as well. And don't forget, the game isn't even finished yet. The list of things to be added is quite generic, it's not detailed. Mod support, for example, has already been added to the game. This game is crying out for some good user-made mods. Now, don't get me wrong, the base game is excellent. However, I can see vast potential with the inclusion of mods. I mean, I've not tried it with mods yet, as I wanted to review just the base game, but I will definitely try it out, and I'll report back with a quick review if I find it's worthy of mention. And I haven't mentioned this game is even multiplayer. Officially, it supports up to 4 players on the same server. However, you can add up to as many as you want to try and get working. Now, I've not tried this because I have no friends. However, the way I've read on the documentation is that 16 or more players could be supported on one server. Now, if this is possible and stable, then again, especially with mods, this could be an incredibly versatile platform to build upon. I'm thinking Minecraft is a popular game as it is now. This would transcend what you could do in Minecraft. So yeah, I can see it being a very, very, very big thing. Yes, with many, many hours of play, tons of things to build and find, tasks to complete, and as much micromanagement as you desire, this is a proper time sink of a game. You won't find edge of your seat action here, and there's no quests or NPCs to interact with, and no fast paced combat. Instead, you have a laid back, easy to pick up factory building and world exploration game with tons of depth and replay value, 5 biomes to choose from with all completely different handcrafted layouts with their own unique challenges to overcome. This is an absolute must for those who want to absorb themselves into a really good game. It's just a shame this game isn't in virtual reality, because now if that was possible, I might never leave. Yes, yes, it is.